And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
Merge with Whole Foods, because when they do stuff like that, the competition at that level goes away. You no longer have another say, well, Whole Foods is using GMO foods. We're going to go shop at Wild Oats. So now there's no longer a Wild Oats. Wild Oats is Whole Foods. And it's sad because they should have never allowed that merger to take place. But again, we know what happens, and that's what they do. They just take over things, and they start buying up and buying up. When you can print money out of nothing, you can pretty much buy whatever you want. And that's just how they do it. This is what they did in the Weimar Republic, and that's what they're doing now. That's why the blue chips and all these different stocks are so high right now, because the bankers are buying them for their banks as portfolio investments, because they're doing it with zero interest dollars. They're printing out of nothing, and they're just pushing the stock market up until this thing comes into a big pop and it falls back down.
Man, I'll tell you, it really makes your brain bleed sometimes, or want to just. I'm thinking about this, and I'm just. You try to do everything that you can properly. You know, you watch what you eat. You don't want to have any GMO stuff. And folks, one thing I'll say, and Ted did not ask me to say this, and I haven't said it, but I watched the video of his laboratory, kind of a virtual tour in a way, and for his supplements. And I've done my homework on supplements. And one thing I'll say about this, and if you're looking for supplements out there, and you should be, folks, because we're not getting the nutrition, the vitamins and minerals that we need. One thing I'll say about this, after looking, I looked at the videos of your lab. It's like a level 5 biocontainment type of situation. I mean, it really is. I was impressed, but I guess the real proof of everything is how you feel. And I've taken, for example, here. I've taken I just grabbed your bottle of B complex. I swear by this stuff. Now, I've taken B complex from various other sources. Never have I had the reaction, the positive reaction from a product than I have from your B complex, and that goes the same with your and this is just true with your cinnamon extract, your other supplements, the chelation therapy. All of these are just, you could tell the difference. Now, and this is what I'm looking for in food too, because you don't want to feed your family something less than something that's modified. But I'll just say this, and where I was going with this is just very simple. Folks, please be careful when you buy supplements and when you buy vitamins. Please know what you're buying. And I can tell you, I guarantee you with Health Masters, this is not a commercial. This is just a statement of fact. With Health Masters, you will be able to tell the difference. If not day 1, day 2, day 3, week 1, or week 2, or week, whatever. Just keep taking it. And I want to thank you personally on air. Thank you for doing what you've done for me. And folks, Ted has, while I'm on the subject, Ted has counseled me and provided me with the necessary supplements to bring my blood sugar down into, really a normal non-diabetic range. And the doctor couldn't even do that with medication. So I'm a walking example of this, and I just want to say thank you for that. You probably saved my life. And I'm not trying to,
But see, we're all in this together. I mean, I like I told you the first time I told you, I said, Doug, I'm going to send you some stuff that's going to take care of these problems. And I said, we can't afford to lose you. And here's my simple guarantee we have on Health Masters products. You get my Health Masters products. You try them for 30 days. And this is I'm telling you this. I don't really push it this hard because I get weirdos. But I can only do this on the Hagmann show, okay? Because I trust your guys. You don't feel 100% better in 30 days on my basic nutrition protocol, which is the B, the C, the D, the E, the multiple, and the iodine. If you don't feel like you're worth 1,000 times better than you felt 30 days earlier, just send it back. I'll refund your money. That's me telling you that I'll refund your money. It has a money-back guarantee. You don't feel 100 times better in 30 days. And I'm not talking about even if you're taking vitamins. I don't care what you're taking. My stuff is that good. I personally take this stuff. I give it to my children. If I could make a better product, I would make it. And I can't. This is as good as it gets. I mean, we use positive. I mean, if you saw the laboratory, in fact, I'm going to post those same videos on my website next couple of days, Doug. I'm going to let people watch those videos because I'm going to put them all together tomorrow because they're still on my iPad. Because that's something I sent to you personally. I haven't posted that because a lot of that stuff is real, real. We don't really broadcast that information out there, but I'm going to send it out there so everybody can see the difference in the quality. And you find somebody else. You go to GNC and tell me if you don't feel 100% better in 30 days, they'll laugh at you. They'll say, whatever, man. Are you kidding me? We've been shown not even to have what we say we have in our products. We don't care because my son runs the company. I mean, I'm kind of like Hagmann and Hagmann. We're broer and broer. I've got my son runs the company. His wife works there. My wife works there. I work there. My 16-year-old kid, he works there. I mean, there's a bunch of brewers in there. I mean, we believe what we tell you because we do the right thing. We make the right supplements and we make them correct. And it goes back to the GMO things. We make sure we test every single batch of stuff that we have coming in, and then it goes into quarantine before it gets used to make sure it doesn't have anything in it. Then it goes to the microbiology laboratory to make sure it doesn't have any biochemical products, any kind of fungus or anything in it. I mean, nobody else does stuff like that. We actually age our products for up to 4 months to make sure they can have a 2-year shelf life so we can put an expiration date on the labels. I mean, nobody does stuff like this, and that's why we sent the video to Doug because we want him to see what we do at Health Masters and why our products are the best in the world. That's why, and I know people say, and that's so funny, Doug. The other day a lady called me up, actually sent me an email, and she goes, man, I ordered your stuff. I cannot believe how good I feel. My energy's through the roof. I heard you on Hagmann and Hagmann. I thought you were being arrogant about how good your products were. She goes, your products really are that good. She goes, I feel unbelievable. And I laughed, but I mailed her back. I said, no, I'm not going to lie to you. I said, how could I possibly have a money-back guarantee if you don't feel great in 30 days? I mean, I don't know what else to do besides that. If the people aren't willing to try a supplement that actually works, we use the highest quality cellulose gel caps in the world. We try to use only powder in those capsules so they get absorbed, they break down, so they don't go through your digestive tract like a lot of the vitamins you buy at the big grocery stores do. You look in the toilet. If you want to look in your own toilet, you're going to find the vitamin passed through you and never even opened up. It never even dissolved. You couldn't get past the shellac coating on it. And that's the problem that we have with most supplements. That's why doctors say vitamins don't work, because they're right. 95% of supplements don't work, and that's a fact, because they're made very poorly, and they're made by these giant laboratories that don't care about you or your family's health, and we're not like that. We're a family-run company. We've been in business for 35 years, and we do what we say we're going to do, and that's my little plug for the thing. And like with your blood sugar, I told you we could fix it, and we did. And the whole thing with the blood sugar comes back down to how tight you want to be on your diet. Let me give you an example. Today, my girls, my 12-year-old and my 14-year-old took their college entrance exams. They missed by like 1 point passing the English and a couple points passing the reading comprehension. These are 12 and 14-year-old kids,
for
right?
College.
We have my 15-year-old's already in college. He's finishing his first year.
Okay, all right.
And so we went to lunch while they were doing this, and we went to a Thai restaurant. And doggone it, I told them I couldn't have MSG. They bring out the soup. I tasted it. A few minutes later, I started getting a headache, and I said, I told you I couldn't have MSG. Just have MSG. Well, it only has a little bit of MSG. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. I said, this is why I don't eat in Polk County where we live. I said, I try to go to Orlando. I said, we try to get health food restaurants. We live in a rural area. I said, that's it. Up and out. We were gone. I paid for the soup and paid for the egg rolls, which were pretty good, and we left. We had some spring rolls, they called them. They weren't deep fat fried. And I thought to myself, I'm not doing it. I'm not compromising myself at this restaurant that I told them I couldn't have MSG. Now I've got a headache from the MSG, and now I'm going to go ahead and eat the rest of their food here and have the main entree. I'm not going to do it. So we left. And see, that's the kind of resolve you have to have when you go to a restaurant. You've got to be willing to ask them, what's in your food? Is this salmon wild caught, or is this farm raised salmon? I want to know, because of parasite infestation on the farm raised. I want to know exactly what kind of food you have. Is this GMO corn, or is this real corn, or is this natural corn? What kind of vegetables do you serve here? What kind of oil do you cook things in? And yes, Doug, Joe, I really do. Joe saw it. Joe saw me walk out of a restaurant with him and his wife in Orlando because all they had was unclean fish, a bunch of skin fish.
When he got back from lunch with you, he said, "Hey, Dad, you got to hear this," and he explained what happened, and I thought, "Good for you, man." And Joe, you can relate, or you can tell the audience the story what happened.
And one thing I was surprised that the second restaurant we went to is had it actually labeled on the menu, like you were saying, that you don't really eat out in your local town. You have to go to Orlando. I've never really seen that before. It says it right on the menu.
No sodium nitrite, right on the menu. That's right.
Yeah,
so I ordered a Reuben sandwich, and then I had them checked. You guys, Joe was there, Doug. I had them checked. I said, make sure that this Reuben corned beef does not have sodium nitrite in it, please. And he came back. He goes, nope, there's no sodium nitrite in it either. I said, okay, I'll have a Reuben sandwich. And that's with the sauerkraut and the corned beef. You say, you're eating sauerkraut and corned beef in a Reuben sandwich? Yeah, matter of fact, it was actually quite good. And there's nothing wrong with eating a corned beef sandwich or a Reuben sandwich as long as it doesn't contain sodium nitrite. And I really like sauerkraut. It's excellent for your digestion. Now, what I did do, though, I piled it on half the bread. I'd only ate half the bread because I didn't want to deal with all the bread. But that's
right.
how I eat. I eat super clean all of the time. And see, that's the difference between me and most people. I mean, the cover of my book, you see me on your website. I mean, I'm 55 years old in that photo, and I look about the same, I guess. I'm 4 years older. I'm 50, almost 60 now. But Sharon still looks great. You guys never even got a chance to meet her. And even last week when I was a little bit under the weather when I did the show for you guys on Monday night, you really couldn't tell I didn't feel 100%. But the point is, when I get sick, I don't really get sick. And the only reason I ever got that cold last week was because I missed taking my iodine, my 13 milligrams of iodine, and I missed taking my vitamin D3 for like 4 days. And what ended up happening is that I went to that conference. I shook so many hands, I must have gotten a hold of somebody. There was something in there that had something, and I got a little bit of that head cold in myself. But I haven't had a cold in years and years and years because I take the iodine, the vitamin C, and I take the D3, K2 every single day, and your immune system goes through the roof and you stay super healthy all the time. It's amazing how good you can feel and how much energy you can have without the use of drugs, without the use of coffee, without the use of statin drugs. And you see, just last week, guys, they finally announced that now they're saying that cholesterol in the diet has nothing to do with heart disease.
Yeah, I saw that.
I've been telling that to people for years and years. What has thing to do with what does heart disease is statin drugs. Statin drugs almost completely stop the production of coenzyme Q10 in your heart. Your body doesn't produce the coenzyme Q10, so you have a coenzyme Q10 deficiency. Your heart muscle has to have coenzyme Q10 to pump, so your heart goes into congestive heart failure from the lack of coenzyme Q10 because you're taking some stupid statin drug. And if you go to healthmasters.com, even if you don't get any vitamins there, you can at least sign up for the free newsletter. I'll send it out to you 3 times a week, and we'll give you all the current updates on what's going on in the health world and what you should and shouldn't be doing. And I've written so many times about statin drugs, and I've said it so many times. I loathe statin drugs. They're one of the worst drugs that you can possibly put into your body, but they spend tens of billions of dollars advertising on TV, billions of dollars advertising with these Victoria's Secret looking like models to go to the doctor's office that had no science background. They bring lunches for the doctors, and they sit there and have lunch with the doctors, and they're all googly-eyed, and they get all these bonuses based upon how many prescriptions they write. I mean, you should watch those videos on this stuff and what's going on in the medical profession. It's awful, and all the perks and all the speaking engagements they get if they write X amount of prescriptions and their $10,000 and $20,000 speaking fees. And it's crazy what's going on with the medical profession, how they've been bought and paid for by the Rockefeller drug cartel, and I talk about that in my Breakthrough Health book. And a lot of your listeners have bought the Breakthrough Health book, and so they know that I'm – here's the thing about me, and this is what's funny. Joyce Riley told me this the other day. I was talking to her, and she's the host of the Power Hour, and I'm helping her on Tuesdays on the Power Hour. She said to me, she goes, you know what the people really like about you, Ted? And I said, well, I'm glad they like me. She goes, no, what they really like about you, they said you're real. They said you're genuine. You know, when you mess up on the air, you say something you shouldn't say. You say, oh, shouldn't have said that, or whatever. She goes, they realize that what you're telling them is the truth. They know that you're not lying to them. She goes, so many hosts out there, they'll say whatever the audience wants to hear. That's the same thing with preachers. They'll say whatever the audience, whatever the congregation wants to hear, whatever has the highest availability of numbers. That's what they say. Preachers do that all the time, Doug. They'll get up there and say, well, you got to do this, this, and this, because they know how to increase the frequency. They know what songs to play to increase the offering. They know what to do to get the maximum. I've watched preachers take 5 offerings in one service. 5 offerings. I couldn't believe it. I was so mad. This is ridiculous. You know, I said, I'll never go back to that church.
Let me just share this with you and our listeners. I got approached. This is Wednesday. It would have been Monday by a potential advertiser for this show, and it was a good fit, actually, a very good fit. And they said, we'd like to advertise with you, and here's the, and they gave the details, and very lucrative. And I thought, my goodness, this one advertiser, this one sponsor could really pay for a month of our expenses in terms of our show, bandwidth and show costs. Except in the contract, the last paragraph, they had they spelled out a couple of things that essentially we could not. I'll remove the legalese and just tell you what they're meaning. We could not talk about homosexuality. We could not talk about anything politically divisive or religiously biased. Now, define that. So I had made a telephone call to the rep who introduced this to me. I said, what does this mean? Precisely what does this mean? In other words, if we're anti-sin, anti-homosexual, the behavior, are you saying that, we're not going to be able to go forward? And he said, that's exactly right. And I said, well, that's, thank you for being honest anyway, and have a nice life. But it's all what I learned there from that conversation. That's a true story. I've got the name of the company right here. I'm not going to give it out, but it's a company that, trust me, you would know. But the bottom line is, it's all about the money, isn't it? It's all
That's
about,
right.
And they control you through that revenue stream. Now,
well, years ago, I had them offer me $50,000 a year to be on one of their corporate boards if I stopped talking about one of their products. This is true. I'm not going to mention any names because I'm not going to get in a lawsuit with this. This is a guy that's been 20 years ago. And we were really nailing a product that a big company, huge company, had come out with. They're on every grocery store shelf. And their attorneys contacted me. I mean, with these next day air packages that you have to sign for. Nothing ever good to come certified mail unless you won the lottery, I always say. And so they open this thing up, and these guys are going to sue me, or I can be on one of their board of directors at $50,000 a year. Okay, but I couldn't mention their products anymore because I was on major talk shows. I mean, major radio stations, #1 in the markets in Cincinnati, in Atlanta, in Detroit, in Chicago, WGN, all of these things, nailing this company because they'd come out with this product that they developed a product, and one of the side effects, this sounds awful, was rectal seepage because it was such an unbelievable, horrible product of what it did to the intestinal tract, and I was just nailing it every which way but loose, and so what I ended up doing is I just had my attorney send them a letter back and said, I will not compromise, I don't care if you're paying me $50,000 a year or not, which is $1,000 a week, just not to mention the name of their product. I mean, are you kidding me? And I thought, I'm not going to do it. I have no interest in being involved with this company trying to buy me and buy my silence. And I'll give my sister credit, though. My sister, she's kind of like, she's kind of messed up, but she does have a PhD from Harvard, and she got a University of Florida medical degree. And I remember years ago she got out of the military. She was working at Bethesda Naval Hospital in the cancer research at the National Cancer Institute, and she was a captain in the military because, people know it's a military facility. And what happened is she was there for 20 years, and then she retired, and then they offered her this big job on Wall Street. And I remember one of the things they told her to do, she was going to be like a spokesperson. I mean, she's got a double doctorate, one from Harvard. And she goes, so, we're all all of us like school, right? And so what we're sitting there is, so she said, she called me up. This is when we were still in a decent term. This was right after my mom had died. And she goes, Ted, they want me to say things that aren't true. Are you listening to me, Doug? She goes, they want me to say things that aren't true. Man, Joe, you hear this? She goes, my sister said they want me to say things that aren't true in the press about their products. She goes, I won't do it. And I said, well, how do you know they're not true? She goes, I've seen the research, Ted. These are lies. I'm not going to say this stuff. This isn't real. They're making stuff up, trying to cover themselves legally, and they want me to put my reputation and my educational background on the line for these people. She goes, I'm not going to do it. Well, almost immediately she lost her job. And that was the end of her and her. It was a Wall Street firm, too, in New York City. It was big. And so I don't know what she's doing now because she just, she bless her heart. She's a medical doctor, so last time I talked to her, she's on like 10 different prescription drugs, bless her heart. She's so messed up because she believes the Rockefeller lie about medical drugs and the pharmaceutical drugs and all the things, and so she's just all messed up. So bless her heart, she's got some issues with all that. But, the point is, even she, knowing what she knew, was tried to be compromised by that. And so that's going to happen all the time. The bigger that Hagmann gets, the more people are going to want to come on and advertise with you guys and put constraints on you and say you can't do this and you can't do this. I told you what happened to me. This is on Fox. This was Channel 13. It was a CBS affiliate. It was called I think it was called Pulse Plus or something like that. It was in Tampa, and we came in there and we did the top 10 foods never to eat. This is back in the 90s. Kathy Fountain was my host, and she ended up doing a show with me on the top 10 foods never to eat. We had a 37% market share of like 13, 14 Tampa Bay counties, the largest market share that ever had, except when they'd gone to the nudist colony. And they actually gave me that a quote. The producer gave me that as a quote. And what happened is I came back on 6 months later. They wanted me back on to have that market share again. And she told me, she goes, they've contacted us about aspartame. You cannot speak about aspartame on this show, or they're pulling all of their advertising revenue. I may have said that to you before on the show. And so we had to do that. And right after that, they're the ones that did the investigators. They did that whole thing on Monsanto again on the bovine growth hormone, and they were told they couldn't air that show because of that. That ended in a big lawsuit. They ended up trying to go under whistleblower status. You can still get that online. This is what they do. They buy you. They shut you up. They don't want you to talk about what the truth is. And they ended up. That means you couldn't have your preachers on. You couldn't have Dizdar on. You couldn't have Paul McGuire on. You certainly couldn't have me on if we start talking about things. And so now all of a sudden you segment your market way down, and pretty soon they put you out of business anyhow because nobody's listening anymore because they know you've been bought out. And see, that's the problem that happens all the time with these radio personalities and TV personalities.
And that's something that we have to be so careful of because, I can just see it going this way. And you mentioned this, and our audience knows this. 6 corporations own the media, basically, all of the media, all
Rothschild controlled.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to mention the hundreds and thousands of other corporations that are owned under, with the media. Yeah, from the fast food places,
interlocking corporate directorships. That's exactly right.
Yeah, the overlay, the incestuous relationships that Joe talked about, and we're seeing this more and more. So where do you go for the truth? You have to go to the independent media, and the independent media, if you're not careful, and I can see this happening. If you're not careful out there, anyone who's independent and thinks, well, I can certainly offset my expenses by grabbing a few sponsors here and there. If you don't read the language, man, you can really get balled up in the.
I'll tell you another one that happened that I know personally. I'm not going to mention any names. I was on the seminar circuit for years and years and years, and I mean this is when I did with Bush and Schwarzkopf and all those other guys. If you go to the bodybyted.com website, you'll see pictures of me with a whole bunch of famous people. I actually know these people. I had dinner with Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, I say that stuff, and people think I just kind of make it up. I don't make anything up. My life has been I'm almost 60 years old. I've been around a long time. I've done a lot of stuff other than what I'm doing right now. I mean, I just started this conspiracy stuff about 4 years ago because God called me out of early retirement to get my butt moving again so I could try to help some more people. And that's the God's honest truth. And I've told you that story about what God talked to me and said to me in a dream one night. And the thing that was amazing to me is that he got my attention. He got me moving again, got me out of this early retirement thing that I was in. I was kind of this just chilling out raising kids, right? And what was interesting, I was with this seminar group, and we were all over the country, and I was speaking with Schwarzkopf and Bush and Colin Powell and Larry King and Benjamin Netanyahu and Margaret Thatcher, and this list goes on and on and on to just ridiculous, like 50 different super famous people. And what happened was the head of the seminar people, I got to be real careful what I say now. The head guy hired a guy that wasn't a good person. This guy's a Satanist, okay?
Oh,
I'm telling you, he is a Satanist. And I warned him because he didn't know he was a Satanist, and I knew what he was. He's into this group sect, these groups orgies, and all this other kind of stuff this guy was, not the seminar leader, but the guy he hired to do the emceeing, and he was paying him $250,000 a day to do this. I mean, that's the kind of money these guys were getting paid on the circuit, right? And I warned the man who owned the company. I said, you're going to dance with the devil in the moonlight. By God, he's going to turn you any way he wants. I said, this guy's bad news. You know he's bad news. I said, you know he's not a Christian. You know he's masquerading as a Christian. I said, you know he picks up a girl in every seminar he goes to. You know what they do. And I said, they pass out their room keys, and they have these little rendezvous together with as many people as he wants to bring into their little master suite there. I said, this guy's a sicko. And I said, you're bringing him in to be the MC? And he goes, well, yeah. Signed a $5 million contract with this guy for, like, I guess that would be 20 seminars. Didn't put a moral clause in there for language or whatever. He gets up on the platform, starts just using filthy language, right? I mean, filthy language. So the head guy fires this guy after I warned him not to hire him, and the guy ends up suing him and got the balance of the $5 million and pretty much bankrupted the corporation. That's a true story. I was in the middle of it. I saw it. I was there. And I tell you what, it happens all the time. People don't realize you got to be careful who you dance with. You got to be careful. You got to be careful who you associate with. You got to be careful what you speak and what you think. I mean, this whole hologram that we live in now is a big soul farm anyhow. One day we'll have to do a whole show on souls and what this whole thing means with the souls on this planet. And the whole thing about it is that's the only thing real that leaves here is our soul when we die. And that's what this whole thing's about. It says in the book of Revelation that in the latter days they will traffic in men's souls, and they will do everything they can to destroy you, to bring homosexuality into your life, pornography into your life, compromise into your life, filth into your life, just all of this horrible stuff. And they know they do it on purpose to debilitate you as a human being and as a Christian, to render you ineffective for the kingdom of God. They do this, including seminar leaders that are a bunch of low-life Satan orgy people. And I mean, I've seen so much stuff in my life that I'm like, wow, there's some really bad people out there. Now, there's some really good people too, like Hagmann, and Steve Quayle and Paul McGuire. And then you guys got the people taking cheap shots at you guys. And of course, I get that too. Anytime you get out there and you take a stand on anything, you're going to get pot shots. People are going to take a stand against you, because you get this whole group of people, like Russ Dizdar says, that are specifically trained to go after people that are in leadership in Christian circles, because they try to make them, they either try to discredit them. It's like I told you that one time, Doug. Remember what I said? They said, here's how people look at it. If you go to a local community college and you get a degree, or you get a degree from a local state school, or then you go to a major university school, everything in descending order everybody else considers as insignificant degrees. Then finally you get to Harvard. Harvard thinks that Yale's a bad degree. Yale thinks that Dartmouth is a bad degree. Dartmouth thinks that Brown's a bad degree. And so everybody puts down everybody else all of the time. They always find something to pick out about everything that someone does, but the reality is they never change the narrative. They never look at the truth. It's like Ross Perot said. He goes, why are you making this about me? Let's make it about the facts, when he was on with Larry King, if you guys remember that back in the 90s.
Yep.
And Ross Perot warned us of the giant sucking sound, and then finally he said they had people going over his compound walls and trying to kill his family, so he pulled out of the race that first time. And I believe that happened to him. I believe that they tried to do that to him. I really do.
I do
so
too.
The problem is, yeah, now I do, because now I know what's going on. Back when he said that first, everybody thought he was nuts. We didn't realize how sick, how corrupt, how satanic this entire operation has become, and that's why even Alex Jones said it the other day. I'm saying it. You've said it. Everybody says it. It's about Lucifer and Satanism is what this New World Order is all about. And if you can't stop for a second, catch your breath, and realize just maybe you don't need to be an atheist, just maybe you don't need to be agnostic, maybe the Bible was right, which it was, and maybe you need to get right with Jesus Christ. See, that's the whole thing. I've had so many people contact me and say, I'm right with Jesus again because I heard you on these shows and you talk about this stuff and you're telling people the truth. I thought it was all just hocus-pocus fairy tales when I was in Sunday school. This stuff is real. And see, that's what people have to understand, Doug and Joe. They've got to understand this stuff is real. These people don't want you to eat healthy. They don't want you to eat organic. They want you to eat GMO. They want you to eat high fructose corn syrup, which is loaded with mercury. They want you to do all of these things that's going to disable you. They want you to use fluoride, which is going to calcify your pineal gland. And everything I've been telling you that the globalists have been doing to us for the past 30 years, everybody's starting to see now, hey, it's the truth. They really have been doing this to us for the past 30 years. And if we don't take a stand in the aggregate as Christians, this country is lost. Macau says he feels the country's already lost. He doesn't feel it can come back. But remember, he's not a Christian. He said he loves Jesus, but he's not a Christian. He doesn't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. I completely and vehemently disagree with him on that. But I brought Macau on y'all's show and interviewed him on purpose because I wanted people to realize that not all Jews were bad, because I got sick of these people. I get so tired of it, Doug. Oh, it's just the Jews. It's the Jews. And I keep saying, no, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. Bush is not a Jew. Bohemian Grove is not filled with a bunch of folks that are claiming to be Jewish. It's a bunch of folks out there that are a bunch of Satan worshipers, and we got to call it what it is. Now, are you saying that the Frankenists and the Sabbatains aren't involved? Absolutely, they're involved. They're the ones that started the cult of the one-seeing eye, the all-seeing eye with the whole thing with the Rothschild banking cartel that they brought all the way back from Egypt. The problem is we can't take a single group of people and blame anything on them, because then we absolve ourselves from any and all responsibility of ourselves trying to make things better.
And
because if we blame it all on
Yep, that's a key statement, what you just said.
Yeah, if we blame it all on one group of people, then we feel as though that we don't have to be involved to try to stop it because it's their fault. No, it's not. It's our fault. It's our parents' fault, Doug. It's our parents' fault for allowing the Roe v. Wade to take place in 73 and allowing the prayer to be taken out of school in the 60s. It's our parents' fault for not standing in the aggregate against what was going on with the McCarthy hearings back in the 50s when the communist folks from Russia were coming into the United States and from Europe and taking over Hollywood in the 40s and in the 30s. I mean, he told the truth. And everybody said the guy was nuts. He was warning us what was going to happen, and nobody would listen to him. They all said he was just a nutbag because the media had already started to get taken over. And that's the truth. And nobody wants to realize that our media is bought and sold. Another time, I can't even tell you that story. It happened on the seminar circuit. But I've had so many things on the seminar circuit that you try to get things and get things done right, and you get nailed. I mean, it's ridiculous what people do and who you think you are. It's like Bill Bennett. Bill Bennett is not who you think he is. Bill Bennett had a gambling addiction. I mean, I know Bill Bennett really, really well. I spent many, many hours talking to him at the seminars. He actually got me in trouble one time because he asked me a question, and I told him the truth, and he went and told the promoter that what I said that was the truth, and I got in trouble for it. And see, but I know these people, and I know these guys, and they're not what you think they are. I felt when I met Henry Kissinger, when I walked up to him, I could feel the presence of evil on the man. It was unbelievable, and I thought, wow, this guy's walking out of the dark side. What's up with this dude? And this is like 20 years ago. I thought, this guy, there's just something wrong with this guy. This guy's just there's something real wrong with this guy. And and Barbara Bush wasn't quite right. I couldn't, but no, I could feel it. Now President Bush, I didn't feel it with Bush.
I saw Kissinger one time. It was in 1981 at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. I was there in it was a motivational seminar, actually, that was held there. And it was for a company that I was associated with. And I saw Kissinger walk through the lobby. And I just, you know what, I couldn't exactly put my finger on it, but although he certainly appeared to be statesman-like, one would describe him as such, there was just something not right. And how can you make that distinction without, interpersonal contact? Well, it's just the gut feeling I had from just seeing his countenance, and there's just something not right. But you up close and personal with him, right?
I talked to him. I shook his hand. I sat there and chit-chatted with him. Remember, he was on the circuit with me. I spoke. He and I shared the same platform. I mean, I was introduced to him as a fellow speaker. Okay, so I was at parity with him that day. See, so he treated us differently. Same thing with Bill Cosby. I told you the story about Bill Cosby on one of the prior shows. I mean, that guy was something else. That's why when I tell you this, you hear the stories of him, I believe all the stories. And what was interesting the other day, I watched him on an interview being discussed on this, and he did an upside-down triangle with his fingers on this interview. You could see him physically make a triangle with his fingers and hold it to the camera so the camera could see it. And that's a sign for the Illuminati to show mercy on him. You may not even know that. Yeah, that's a mercy sign. That means have mercy on me. And since he had that interview now, I haven't seen any more stuff on him about the press.
Wow, I never heard that.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah, that's a sign of mercy for these guys. So what the thing about it is that all these guys know what's going on at that higher level. They have to know because they have to make sure they keep the chains on these people. That's why I said if Putin said he's getting rid of the Rothschild banking cartel, I believe he's not there anymore, okay, if he really meant that. Now, if that was just obfuscation and more media chatter, I don't know. I never saw it in the mainstream press. It was an article that had been written in Germany and was translated into English that I sent you guys. And so I don't know if that article's accurate. Who knows? But if that article's accurate, that boy's not long for the world. He's going to follow the path of the of the former king of Russia, Tsar Nicholas. And so that's the whole thing. You can't do that with these guys. These guys, they don't play that game. They put you in a position, and you're a lapdog to these boys. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, there's a Rothschild-controlled bank in Russia. Are you kidding me? That means the Rothschilds run that country.
Right.
Just like they run us, just like they run the Eurozone. They run everything. And that's why.
But Ted, in a war scenario, let's just say, let's play this out. If because of the Ukraine or Crimea or something over in that area, or even because of Syria. Let's say that U.S. and Russia go head-to-head, not by proxy, but at the nation-state level, and it turns into a hot war. You've got the Rothschilds, really. Well, you've got the Committee of 300, but you've got the global elitists bankrolling both sides, so they can control the outcome. Bottom line, right?
Yeah, that's right. And they want to reduce the population of the planet, but I don't think it'll go nuclear, Doug. I really don't. I really don't. I think they may tell us that it went nuclear. They may tell us that there were nukes detonated, and they may use those fuel air bombs. Those things are like little mini nukes anyhow. They could do all kinds of stuff with those super advanced weapons they have that aren't nuclear. But I don't think that they're going to do nuclear anymore because they stopped doing nuclear back in the 60s I don't think they understood what happened in the fabric of space-time when they detonated these things. I think it was a major problem, and for these other dimensional entities. And I think that they're not going to allow that to happen. That's why I started this last hour off talking about the stand out of that nuclear missile facility silo back in the 60s when that spaceship showed up out front. And I mean, that's well documented. My gosh! And then all of a sudden, all the silos went dead.
Very interesting, and that's, as you said, well documented. And if you look at it, look at the incident. Or incidents, if you want to. Well, it would be one incident, multiple locations. It certainly explains a lot, doesn't it? How these things work.
You've got to take it. You have to take it into consideration. You've got to throw it in the mix. As weird as it sounds, you've got to throw it in the mix, Doug.
Well, have you? Well, let me ask you this. I don't think we've talked about this at all. About the back in the late '60s, when we had the Scorpion incident, the submarine. We also had an incident where a K-129 Russian submarine on March 8th, 1968, based on information that we have, attempted to. Well, it was a nuclear submarine, and it went down in the 350 miles northeast of Hawaii. And the story that I have is that this nuclear submarine was going to launch on Hawaii. The nuke-tipped missile blew up in the silo, and the submarine, the K-129, went down. And of course, in part, the Glomar, which was really financed by Howard Hughes, was the ship to bring the K-129 up, and there was kind of black. I mean, it's a long story if you do the research on this. I guess I brought that up to say, I mean, there's a lot of information that's being kept from us, and certainly when we look at history is nothing like we've been taught in school or led to believe. And you mentioned, this is the other thing too, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around here, but you've got such a great mind, and you're absolutely full of information. If you look at McCarthy, you mentioned McCarthy. There was back in 1950, a couple of his speeches and a couple of papers actually that were supposedly being held at the National Archives. Were held at the National Archives. Were checked out in 1996, and when M. Stanton Evans went to find them, they were gone, completely gone. They were expunged from the National Archives. And he went. This is the other thing too that Stanton Evans wrote in his book, a speech that McCarthy made. That's often, people have tried to bury this speech and misquote it and misdirect us. But in West Virginia, I think it was Wheeling, West Virginia, the Intelligencer, which is a paper in Wheeling. The story that M. Stanton Evans was attempting to find, the speech, was documented by this particular newspaper in Wheeling. Well, this is back in the early 50s. When Mr. Evans went to the archives, couldn't find it there in the National Archives, went to the actual newspaper in Wheeling, he found that all of the Wheeling Public Library had all of the particular issues from the 1950s except that particular reel or that documentation, and it was gone. So I guess what I'm saying is there is a lot of revisionist history out there. And what you're saying... No.
Look what John Podesta said just a few weeks ago. This just happened a few weeks ago, and you guys will look it up. He said a senior White House advisor who's leaving to reportedly head up a Hillary Clinton bid for president said the biggest regret on departing is not securing the release of the UFO files. I mean, John Podesta said this, so that's the thing that people don't understand. This is real. And, I mean, nobody wants to think about it because everybody thinks it's going to mess up our faith and everything else, and the world's going to come to a screeching halt when people realize that, we're not alone. Well, God never said we were alone to start with. Why should it mess up our faith? And see, that's the thing. When the Podesta said this a few weeks ago, he made a huge inroad as far as telling people, hey, look, we needed to disclose these UFO files and tell the people what's really going on, especially what was it back in the 50s or the 60s, that whole flock of that whole group, that whole squadron of UFOs flew over the White House. I mean,
yes.
We got some crazy stuff going on now. I mean, and so we got technology out there from these fallen spaceships when they've come down that has given us all of this advanced technology that we have now 60, 70 years later. I mean, we didn't make this leap by ourselves. And the sad part about it is that nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, Jim Marrs talks about it. I mean, we all know it's real. It's just nobody wants to talk about it because it makes you sound like you're some kind of kook. But now people are beginning to realize that, hey, well, maybe we're not kooks. I mean, I've seen lights in the skies that do weird things. I've never seen a spaceship. I've never seen an alien. At least not. Of course, there were people I've seen in seminar circuits they thought were aliens. But they were pretty weird. But the point is, I mean, we don't know what's going on. But the reality is we don't take a look at this whole thing from an interdimensional standpoint, and these other species that are on this planet, and these other species that are on in this world. A friend of mine, a preacher, told me, he says, we got to stop talking about the fallen angels. The original fallen angels got locked up, and they're still locked up. Okay, all right. I told him, I said, I'll give you that. I said, but here's the thing: how do you know we haven't had any other additional angels fall? How do you know these aren't just regular angels? I mean, how do you know how do we know yet? We haven't even disclosed. We don't even know who these things or what these things are. Maybe there's some undisclosed life form. They're not angels at all. I said, we don't know what these things are, but what I always tell people, and I always do this in the book with that David Icke does, when he talks about these aliens, I always say, just say fallen angels. It's if you insert that in everything that David Icke writes, then it makes a whole lot more sense from a Christian standpoint, because we do know that these things are not from around here. The Bible's very clear about that. But nobody wants to talk about it because they think the Bible's more hocus pocus, because it's the teachings they're getting from the pulpit on Sunday morning that's not telling them the truth about Genesis chapter 6 and all of the other things that happen with the fallen angels breeding with all these women and basically populating the entire planet with a bunch of giants and Nephilim. I mean, and it says very clearly they were there before the flood and also after the flood. And so we can't pretend like that's not something that it says, because it says that. Well, if they were there after the flood, when did they get locked up, all of these guys, and how do we know more of them didn't fall? We know the original 200 watchers that came down, those were the ones that used Enoch as an advocate to try to get back in God's good graces, but we don't know how many of the other ones that aren't the 200 that fell with Lucifer that are still running around. We don't know those things, Doug. Joe, the Bible's not real clear on that. Unless you, Joe, what do you think about that? Because you're an expert on all that stuff.
What Josh Peck says about was the extra dimensional versus
chariots. Go ahead, sir.
What's the other term he used? Not extra dimensional. Not extraterrestrial, extra dimensional. Like
right.
Ted, like you just referenced. And the Bible is very. I think it's very clear on this. From Jude to Peter, even back into the Old Testament, even in the Gospel, in the four Gospels, we read about that there are supernatural forces in this world. There are in Jude, I believe, or in James, one of the two, it talks about beware, because you don't know when you could be possibly entertaining an angelic presence. A good angelic presence it was referring to in James, I believe it is.
But doesn't that infer there exists bad or antichrist?
Well, yeah, we're told in the beginning from Genesis, when Nimrod, he was mighty, and we're told about the story in Genesis also about the giants before and after the flood. The extra biblical text, if you will, Enoch, explains how the giants and the Nephilim had mated with women on earth and bore giants, and the giants are the disembodied spirits that are referred to as demons. But either way, we're told clearly in the Bible that in the scriptures that there are good and bad angels. There's a hierarchy on either side, and we have to always go ahead.
Remember in the Old Testament, one of the prophets had called on God, and he had dispatched Michael. And Michael was running late because he had to get into the big battle in the heavenlies with the Prince of Persia. Remember that? Another angel.
Daniel.
See,
yeah.
Daniel, that's right. And so what happened, if all of these guys got locked up in the beginning, then this wouldn't have happened. It just wouldn't have happened. So we know there's bad ones still running around, so we have to understand that. And that's how I look at it. I mean, I believe that the original batch that got locked up in hell are still there. I believe that. I believe that when God, the ones that were using Enoch for an advocate, and apparently Satan's still running around as a roaring lion on the planet seeking those who may devour, because the Word says that's what he's doing. And again, he's another interdimensional being. Now, whether he had his wings clipped, so to speak, and he can't do all that stuff, I don't know what he can and can't do anymore, because we know he's not omnipresent. We know that he's not omnipotent. We know that he's not omniscient. We know that. So we understand that he has limits that he can do because he's not God. And that really that makes them unbelievably mad, because that's why they're after us and after our souls, because apparently, from the way I can tell it, since they're all interested in us anyhow, we're the only species that I can see that were created in God's image, and we're the only ones with souls and creative ability and the ability to create See, when you understand biophysics and you understand transdimensional physics, it says that objects are not in front of you unless you're looking at them, that they appear when you see them. Now, this is what physics have shown. This is what they got in a big dispute with Einstein about. I just read a whole book on transdimensional physics last night.
Whoa. Stop right there. Wait a second. So the monitor I'm looking at right now, the computer monitor, is not there, or it's there because I'm looking at it, but if I don't look at it, it's not there?
Consciousness creates physical reality. Our souls do. And apparently we're the only species in this universe that's capable of doing that. That's why we're in this hologram, and it's projected around us. And I read about 240 pages in this book yesterday, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I knew a lot of this because it was done with line experiments and slit experiments, and how protons behave differently when they're being viewed by consciousness. And in these different tests that were done in science and in physics. And this is the thing that threw the huge thing in the theory of relativity, because they couldn't understand it, because they couldn't understand how the string theory and all these other things tied together. And so this book that I'm reading right now goes into detail on that, but I've already seen all of this. See, remember this. This is really interesting. The back of our eyeball, there's a retina. The retina itself has a hole going into the back of the retina where the optic nerve goes in, which goes into the brain. Now, in that back of that retina where that nerve goes in, there's no retina, and there's a blind spot in the back of the eyeball. Okay? That's why when you were taught in driver's education, you look to the left, you look to the right, you look to the left again. Because if you had it in your blind spot, you wouldn't see the car coming. Now, when we look at the wall or we look at the computer screen in front of you, we don't see a blind spot because our brain constructs a reality in that blind spot and fills in the hole.
I get that.
Have you ever heard that? You've heard that before, haven't you?
Yeah.
But that's how it works. So
it
creates that in front of you. So what this transdimensional physics thing was saying last night, combining string theory with the theory of relativity and all the different stuff about quarks and all the different things that's why we know now there is no locality. We've known this. Chuck Missler talks about this. Our mind, our consciousness, our soul has no locality in our body. It doesn't exist. That's why they've been able to do the remote viewing and all the stuff that they do when they start doing this. Apparently, we're the only species in this universe that can do this. Now, I'm working on an entire program on this. I'm just giving you the tidbits of what I've been learning so far. And so we're apparently the only thing that can do this. These other angels, they can't do that. They don't have the ability for their brains to construct a reality from sound waves like we have. We have the ability to transcend all that. We were indeed created in God's image. If we had not been detuned, if Adam had not been detuned, if he had not fallen from grace and God had finished doing the DNA programming on him from what he could do, he would be as God. That's what the word says. He was a carbon copy of God. So we have been created in that image. And so what happened is that this hair-lipped Lucifer in the bunch, because they weren't made this way, they don't have the ability of creative, constructive thought. They can't do that. And when you read all the accounts of these aliens, these drones and everything, they're like robot-like creatures. And so that's why they're trying to fuse themselves with our DNA, because they want what God gave us. And apparently we're the only thing that got that we know of and that they know of that can do this, that we have the ability to do. And so that's why this whole thing's about destroying God's creation. These entities, these whatever they are, they're just mad because they don't have that ability. That's why they're trying to change our DNA. They're trying to make themselves more like us. They're trying everything they can with these genetic experience to figure out this code that God did, which allowed our consciousness to be able to create solid objects. That's why I've told you on the show before. Now, you guys are thinking, now the guys are listening right now, they're thinking, Ted Brower's gone off the deep end. He's going to transdimensional physics. Okay? I'm telling you guys, the brain that God gave us, the abilities that he gave us were nothing short of miraculous. That's why Jesus said, ask whatever you will, and it shall be given unto you. Tell this mountain to go into the sea, and it'll be cast into the sea. I mean, that's the words of Christ himself. We always think those are metaphors. We don't know if they're metaphors now or not, but we do know for some reason this evil bunch, they got this thing for us, and they want to change us, and they want to either become like us, they want to breed with us. I mean, look at all these DNA experiments that are being done with these cattle mutilations and these humans that are being abducted on an ongoing basis. Why are they taking out reproductive organs? Why are they taking out sperm? Why are they taking out ovum? Why are they reimplanting them back into people? We know these stories are true. Why are they putting these chips? I mean, we talked to what's his name? L.A. Marzulli. I had him on the show. He said that there was a chip in one of the guys when they removed the chip, and there was nothing they'd ever seen. It was moving around, and it actually disappeared. They couldn't find it on the MRI. They couldn't find it on the ultrasound. And then L.A. prayed over this guy's leg where this chip was, where they had seen earlier, and they said if there's anything in the supernatural realm blocking us seeing this chip, please, I bind that now in the name of Jesus and make it visible. He said it showed up immediately on the ultrasound, and they were able to remove it. I mean, we've got things that are going on around us that go bump in the middle of the night that we really don't understand. This thing that God put us in, this consciousness that has no locality, that doesn't even exist in our own mind. I mean, it's for instance this: if you start, the body is so amazing at what it does. The consciousness can be moved and transported. That's what our soul does after we die. I mean, that's what's so unique when God forms us in the womb and he makes us and we have consciousness come into us. I guess these other species don't know how to figure all that stuff out as far as the abilities that we have, and that's why they're hair-lipped trying to figure out what's going on. And that's why it says that in the latter days men will be they'll be trafficking in the souls of men. There's something else going on. I'm trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, but I'll tell you, I'll get you the name of that book and let you read it. I'm going to have him on as a Power Hour guest in the next few weeks, but I've already read all about the slit experiences and stuff like that. Because what happens is when you look at protons and you don't look at them and they're just being photographed, they have a certain random pattern. But when you look at them moving,